Ever since stepping down from his position as general manager with the New York Knicks and joining ESPN, Scott Perry has been very vocal about what he wants to see the New York Knicks do and accomplish this season and moving forward. And recently, in an interview with the Hoop Genius podcast, he spoke about the Knicks potentially pursuing and going after OG Anunoby. And he also identifies one critical issue the Knicks must fix for them to be a contender in the Eastern Conference. We're going to break down all of this and so much more today. So be sure you're subscribed to the channel and have notifications turned on so you don't miss a second of the new content. And now, let's get started. Scott Perry speaks out on the Knicks pursuing OG Anunoby. Now, is it just me, or do you also love this awakened, unlocked, very vocal Scott Perry? For me, it's like, where was this Scott Perry when you were part of the Knicks front office, when you were general manager? Because of a lot of the things he's saying, all the things he's giving takes on, I agree with him. I believe him, and I want to see the Knicks do these things. So for me, it's a little mind-boggling that now that he's left the Knicks, he's even more vocal on what the Knicks should potentially do. On the Hoops Genius podcast, he had another interview and he was speaking about the Knicks potentially pursuing OG Anunoby, and he gave his thoughts on that matter. Roll the clip.
Would I be crazy for going after OG if I was the GM of the Knicks, Scott?
Oh, I don't think you'd be crazy, Mo. He's a two-way player that BJ talks about. He can defend, he can take the challenge, he's strong. So he matches up well at 6'8" against most small forwards in the league. He can knock down open shots. I think he can play off other good players. If he were a guy to come to the Knicks, he'd be playing off guys like Randall and Brunson and RJ Barrett. So yeah, I think that's a very good name. I don't want to put him out there like that, but right. if that did come to pass, I could see him as being someone who would fit with that roster.
Shout out to Scott Perry for dropping more information and gems in this interview with the Hoops Genius podcast with ESPN. And did you note that when he said that the Knicks, if they went after OG Anunoby, he could potentially get better playing off of guys like RJ Barrett, Julius Randle, Jalen Brunson, basically speaking to the fact that if the Knicks went after OG Anunoby, they would do so with the hopes of retaining their current big three, to add to it, not to destroy it and move pieces away from it. So it does seem, at least from Scott Perry's point of view, and since he's left the Knicks, we'd have no idea if the Knicks as of right now have updated their take on this. But at least for right now, according to Scott Perry, the motivation is for the New York Knicks to at least keep the Knicks big three in Barrett, Brunson, and Randall together, at least for the next few seasons. And you want to add talent to it. And OG Anunoby might be a piece, might be a name that the Knicks go after, pursue, and add to this team. Especially because behind Mikal Bridges, he is the absolute best and perfect fit for this Knicks team. And Scott Perry himself said it too. If he comes to this team, he'll allow RJ Barrett to go to his natural position. He'll allow other players to be better at their position. Not only that, he gives us size back at the positions that we need it the most. OG makes a lot of sense. So clearly, ESPN is going to ask Scott Perry about it because OG Anunoby has been a constant name on the Knicks trade wish list for the last few years. Even going back to last season, the trade deadline, the Knicks had interest in trading for OG Anunoby, according to SNY's Ian Bagley. Unfortunately, the Knicks didn't want to part with the picks that they needed to in order to get OG. So because of that, here we sit again with the OG Anunoby situation happening with Toronto, the Knicks and Toronto embroiled in a lawsuit, the Knicks desperately needing a player like OG Anunoby, him potentially being available, but the Knicks, unfortunately, not being able to get him because of this lawsuit. And even if this lawsuit wasn't on the table, dealing with Masai Ujiri would always be a pain. And I don't think Leon Rose would even want to do that. An OG Anunoby move for the Knicks will only happen this offseason if and when he declines that player option and explores free agency. And I think he's definitely going to do that, especially now that he's CAA. The Knicks are absolutely going to target him if he makes himself available. And I think, guys, he absolutely will. But OG Anunoby is a name that every Knicks fan wants. Every Knicks fan wants to say, but they hold back from saying because he's part of the Toronto Raptors. And obviously with the lawsuit, nobody wants to speak out about it because there's no point in doing so. It's like getting excited for no reason. You get excited thinking about the idea, the prospect, what he could do with this roster. And then you think about if it could actually happen. And then you get sad again because you know it can't, given the situation and the circumstances. But I hope after this offseason, the Knicks can acquire OG, get him on their team, add to the Knicks' big three, like Scott Perry basically is alluding the Knicks want to do, and continue to make this team, make this roster better, and make them a competitor, a true threat in the Eastern Conference. That's exactly what I want to see the New York Knicks do. And I think adding talent to this roster slowly and surely, unless there's a surefire way to get a superstar on this roster without gutting the team, is exactly what Leon Rose's plan is at the moment. Scott Perry identified one huge Knicks issue. Like I said, guys, Scott Perry with an open mic, no Leon Rose, no Knicks management behind him on ESPN is a very powerful man because he gets to say whatever he wants and he gets to make comments that maybe he couldn't say exactly the way he wanted to say out loud when he was with the Knicks, but now he has no problem saying. He's identified an issue with the Knicks and what they're doing. And he basically stated with ESPN that if they don't improve on this particular stat, they're going to lose more games than they're going to win this season. Shout out to New York Basketball on the app X for reporting the following. Malika Andrews on ESPN asked Scott Perry the following. What do the Knicks need to do to hit their ceiling? Scott Perry, former Knicks GM, answered with the following. This group has to start sharing the basketball better. League average in terms of assists is 26, and at times, the Knicks had games where they were averaging 18 assists. They can't live on a steady diet of one-on-one. They are at their best when they share it. They didn't rebound. They didn't play Knicks basketball when they faced a couple of teams, including the Phoenix Suns. I do have some confidence because they're a tough group, resilient, and toughness perseveres in this league, and you can win with that. I think in every single video that I do after a Knicks game, I probably say the two top things that I have issues with that the New York Knicks do. Don't defend at the perimeter and the three-point line right, and don't pass the ball enough. And well and behold, right here, former GM Scott Perry, again, drops another gem here and says the exact same thing. The Knicks, some nights, not all the time, but some nights, will average 18, 19 assists team-wise. That is terrible, atrocious. As he just told you, league average is 26 assists. If you're underneath that, that's terrible. That's very bad, actually. And honestly, a lot of the games that the New York Knicks beat teams in and blew out teams in, they were passing the ball at a great rate. Everybody was touching the ball. And if you look at those games, they're upwards of 28 to 29 assists. Surprisingly enough, the games that the New York Knicks have won and beat teams in, blew them out in, those games, they're likely averaging around 28, 29 assists. Well over league average, and that's the type of New York basketball fans love to see. I clearly love to see, but more importantly, what leads to winning. You have to move the ball. You have to pass the ball. Everybody needs to touch the ball. It stops being ISO basketball when you do that. And the Knicks need to run away from ISO basketball as fast as possible because defenses want the Knicks to run ISO because that's easier to guard. When the Knicks are passing the ball to everybody, it's way harder to guard that because somebody's going to get open. And that's what defenses do not want the Knicks to have. Why won't the Knicks do that more? I don't know if it's a coaching thing, if it's a player thing. It might be both. But it's a clear issue. Scott Perry notices it. I've noticed it. Some of you guys have noticed it in the comments. I've seen you guys mentioning it. It needs to be addressed. Tom Thibodeau, I'm looking at you for this. Please, Thibs, address this so it doesn't become an even bigger problem as we move forward during this season. But what about you guys? What do you think about this situation? Do you agree? Do you think that Tom Thibodeau should address the passing concerns? And what about Scott Perry and what he stated about OG Anunoby and the Knicks' pursuit of him? Let me know in the comments below, guys, because honestly, I would love to hear from you. But that's going to do it for this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, go ahead and smash that like button, leave a comment below. And of course, guys, please subscribe to the channel. Until next time, Knicks fans. Peace.